Haribol, Haribol. Gauranga. Jetzt. Hare Krishna. So, English. English, huh? English. Wer übersetzt für Kishori Kund? Björn, ich glaube, du musst es Übersetzungsheber machen. Ich weiß nicht, ob du das kombinieren kannst. Okay. Subalji oder Sanjay, 2 Übersetzer kommen gleich rein. Jetzt haben wir Übersetzung Überfluss. Könnt ihr für Kishori Kund Mataji übersetzen? Kannst du das Buch geben? So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, Swayambhuva Manu advises Dhruva Maharaj, text 30. Yes. Please repeat. Tvam pratyak atmani tada bhagavati anantam anandam matram upapanam samastam shakto bhaktim vidhaya paramang shanakair avidya granthim vibetsyasi mamaham iti prarudham. Tvam pratyak atmani tada bhagavati anantam. Tvam pratyak atmani tada bhagavati anantam. Anandamatra upapana samasta shakto. Anandamatra upapana samasta shakto. Bhaktim vidaya paramam shanakair avidyam. Bhaktim vidaya paramam shanakair avidyam. Grantim vibetsyasi mamaham iti pararudham. Grantim vibetsyasi mamaham iti parudham. Tvam pratyagatmani tada bhagavatyanantam. Anandamatra upapana samasta shakto. Bhaktim vidaya paramam shanakaira vidyam. Grantim vibetsyasi mamaham iti parudham. Ladies? Word by word translation. Tvam, you, pratyak atmani, unto the super soul. Tada, at that time. Bhagavati, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anante, who is unlimited. Anandamatre, reservoir of all pressure. Upapana, possessed of. Samasta, all. Shakto, potencies. Bhaktim, devotional service. Vidhaya, by rendering. Paramam, supreme. Shanakahi, very soon. Avidya, of illusion. Grantim, the knot. Vibetsyasi, you will undo. Mama, my. Aham, I. Iti, thus. Prarudham, firmly fixed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thus regaining your natural position and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure and who lives in all living entities as their supersoul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my. Purport. Dhruva Maharaj was already a liberated person because at the age of 5 years he had seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But even though liberated, he was for the time being afflicted by the illusion of Maya, thinking himself to be the brother of Uttama in the bodily concept of life. The whole material world is working on the basis of I and mine. This is the root of attraction to the material world. If one is attracted by this root of illusory conceptions, I and mine, he will have to remain within this material world in different exalted or nasty positions. By the grace of Lord Krishna, the sages, and Lord Manu reminded Dhruva Maharaj that he should not continue this material conception of I and mine. Simply by devotional service unto the Lord, his illusion could be eradicated without difficulty. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopipakanta Radhakanta Namostate Jayatam Surato Pangor Mamamanda Matirgati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radhamadana Mohano Divyat Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Shimadratangara Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govindadeva O Prashtalivi Srimana Smarami Shrimanra Sarasaram Vivam Siva Tatatastitaha Karsham Veno Svanair Gopir Gopinata Shri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Garadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Once again the verse and translation. Tvam pratyagatmani tadabhagavatyananta anandamatra upapana samasta shakto bhaktim vidaya paramam shanakara vidya grantim vibetsyasi mamaham iti parudham. Thus regaining your natural position and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure, and who lives in all living entities as the Supersoul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my. Hare Krishna. So, there are two key words maybe here in this verse that I can say something about. This is the word avidya and grantim. Avidya, grantim. So the word avidya, I'm sure most of you know or have heard before. Avidya, what does avidya mean? Ignorance? Yeah. Anything else? Not knowingness, yeah. Literal. Anything else? Avidya? Illusion, here was written illusion. Anything else? We sing every day, Sharira Vidyajal. What does it mean? Huh? No? Avidyajal, what does Avidyajal mean? No, Jal is a beutel, a bag. So this body is a bag of avidya. Avidya bag. So the word avidya can stand for material existence altogether. So the material existence is avidya. The material world is avidya. And more specifically, directly related to us, this material body, sharira avidya. This material body is avidya. So avidya is the, and Vedasara Prabhu said, not knowingness. This is the literal meaning. Vidya means knowledge or wisdom, to know, to be conscious. And avidya is when we are forgetful. So forgetfulness is avidya as well. And this forgetfulness leads, of course, to material identification. And this is what Mano is trying to remind Dhruva of. So Prabhupada is also saying here in the purport that actually Dhruva Maharaj was already liberated, because at the age of 5 he already saw the Supreme Lord. But even he was liberated, he was for the time being afflicted by the illusion of Maya, thinking himself the brother of Uttama in the bodily concept of life. So this avidya is very powerful, and if you understand avidya in the, you could say, bigger picture, we are surrounded by avidya. So this material existence, very often also in Bhagavatam, is referred to as avidya. The whole material world is called avidya. So because we are surrounded by avidya, the whole world surrounding us is a place of forgetfulness. Plus this body inflicts on us the concept that we are this body, or the sensation that we are this body. And because the illusion is so seamless, so the word seamless means that there's no delay. There is no delay between your wishes and the actions the body does. So the more seamless, the better the experience, you could say. I don't know if you any of you had the problem with stuttering, stottern. So, or you might have seen some people, who had this problem, and they want to say something, and so very unpleasant. For most of us, talking is seamless. We want to say something, and as we want to say it, we say it. Sometimes, of course, avidya might be also there. We forget the words, What word was it? What I wanted to say, So the more seamless, the more we have a sensation that everything is good and correct. And most of the time, the illusion of the material body works seamlessly. All the functions of the body, be it eating, sleeping, mating, defending, walking, seeing, touching, feeling, all of it works seamlessly, and therefore the illusion is very good. And a very good example for this also is video games, which are very popular nowadays. So the more immersive the video game, nowadays also maybe with virtual reality headsets, people play video games, and they're so immersed in the sensation that there's also very popular videos filming somebody who is really screaming, out of fear, or falling down while standing, or running against the wall, while in a video set. So we are in a very similar position. We are in an illusion. This material body is a very the best, high resolution video game you could imagine, virtual reality we could imagine. It's not true, it's not ultimate reality. It's one layer of reality. And I forgot all the layers of reality, but there's the waking state, we have the waking state, we have the sleeping state, we have the deep sleep state, and then we have the turiya, the transcendent state. Maybe I forgot something. But there's different levels of consciousness. There's the ultimate level of the soul. There is deep sleep, where we are externally, all the senses are reduced to its minimum activity. Then we have dreaming, which is very active, and very, a lot of sensations are there. Might even have a physical effect when you have a nightmare. You wake up and you are sweating, or shivering, or are afraid, and then there's the waking state, and all of this are different, positions, of reality, but ultimately only transcendence, is true. All the others are different forms of avidya. And in this connection, there is one very interesting aspect about deep sleep, which is always important or interesting to hear, because here we hear about pratyak atmani. So pratyak atmani is referring to the super soul. So the Lord, which is internal, which is the companion, we are not alone. We are always in the company of the super soul. The super soul is as antaryami in the heart, and it is actually because of his doing, his allowance, or his permission, that we actually survive, live, experience, suffer, enjoy. Everything that we are experiencing is directly controlled by the super soul. So Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, knowledge, remembrance, what else? Forgetfulness comes from me, and he is Upadrashta Numanta. He's the witness of every action. So, and he's given permission also. He's given permission for us to do something. Shri Shri Paladakshmi Singari Bhagavan Ki Jai. So the Lord is giving permission, and without his sanction, we will not experience, anything. You could also say that the super soul is providing or giving the karmas, as we deserve them. The super soul directly is in control. And especially for a devotee, it says that the super soul or Krishna directly actually is controlling our destinies. It's not just all by chance, it's not all happening mechanically. There is a personal involvement of the Lord there. He's the one who gives us knowledge, remembrance, unforgetfulness, and is allowing different activities to take place. And one of the ways that we actually are dependent on the Lord is deep sleep. So when we go into deep sleep, what is happening? Somebody knows? So because we are in the Antaranga and the Bahiranga. So Antaranga is the internal reality, but we are very much focused in the external reality, Bahiranga Shakti. And that means that the false ego is pushing us to find happiness, to seek experiences, to seek fulfillment through the senses externally. Through sensory perception externally, we try to feel something, be happy, become fulfilled. But this is very exhausting, very exhausting. Trying to be happy through the external senses doesn't really ultimately work. To some extent, we might feel some happiness, which is very, transitory. It's very temporary. It's very, disappointing a lot of the time as well. And it is very exhausting. So therefore, at the end of the day, you are very tired. So the more you, use the senses, the more you, eat, see, touch, feel, hear, smell. Like some people have this job, they have to smell perfumes, or cheese also, and see if it's good quality or not. But you can only do it for a certain amount of time, because after some time you don't smell anything anymore. So all the senses become very fast saturated. You can only eat so much. And also generally it's recommended, don't eat something too strong at the beginning. If you eat like a lot of sweets in the beginning, then the salty spices afterwards won't taste as good. So the senses become very easily saturated, very easily, you could also say they become unsharp, like a knife. The more you use it, it becomes unsharp. So then we are very exhausted at the end of the day, and then we go to sleep. And we might dream, and we might recollect whatever happened during the day, or some skaras, some impressions from previous lives might also be there. And you might be dreaming that you're flying, or about mountains of gold, or I don't know, something. Maybe you're a king, or you're solving a big problem, and then you wake up and, oh, thank God it's not a real problem, But at one point, we also go into deep sleep. And when we go into deep sleep, all the sensory activities are reduced, including the mind, is finally calm. Because dreaming can also be very exhausting, actually. Similar like external activities are exhausting, dreaming is also very exhausting. And from a neutral point of view, dreaming is as real as external experiences. They have an equal effect on our consciousness. They're both temporary manifestations. They're both different forms of avidya. But in deep sleep, like Subal Gopal was saying, the soul enters into the Atma, us, we enter into the effulgence of the super soul. And we are recharged. We are recharged because we are exhausting ourselves so much externally, so we are recharged. And if you have a good deep sleep, you will be again recharged. If you didn't have good deep sleep, you won't be recharged. And actually, sleeping is very important. You can survive without food and without water for quite some time, maybe food like a month or something without food, without water maybe a week or so, but without sleep we cannot survive very long. Usually a few days, 3 days, 4 days. And I remember in Peru when the workers went on strike and capitalists would not react, then they went not on a hunger strike. If the hunger strike also didn't work, then they went on a sleep strike. And then for sure, there was some reaction, usually. So sleep is very important. And deep sleep is when we actually reconnect with the Lord. And that's why very advanced devotees don't need so much sleep. We hear about Srila Prabhupada, or Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or many different yogis. They are always connected with the Lord. And basically what they're doing, Urmila Mataji once was talking about it, that there are explanations in I think in Ayurveda, that the physical body, the actual physical body, only needs around 2 hours of rest. 2 hours of rest, and then it's ready to go again. What we really need to rest is all these impressions of the senses, the mind. That's what needs the actual rest. So, and you can see that in very advanced devotees or yogis, they sleep very, very little. So Prita Prabhu was telling the story when the German devotees were leaving Vrindavan, the last time they saw Srila Prabhupada, or one of the last times, they were going to go, and I forgot if it was Tamal Krishna or Hamsadutta. Somebody said, "No, you can go to meet Prabhupada in the middle of the night." And they're like, "But it's the middle of the night." "No, don't worry, you can go." So they went into the room of Srila Prabhupada, and they paid obeisances, and Prabhupada was lying in his bed, and it's like, "Hare Krishna," and started talking to them. So the servants knew that Prabhupada never really slept in that sense, that he was passed out, like, completely gone. He was in Yoga Nidra. So Yoga Nidra, Mahavishnu is in Yoga Nidra, but also yogis, they are in Yoga Nidra. Their sleep is always yoga. They're always connected. They're not separated. They're always conscious. And Prita Prabhu was telling that Prabhupada started citing verses from the Brahma Samhita, and explaining to them the verses, while he was lying in bed, and wished them all the well, all success to distribute more books. And then, they paid obeisances and left. So, because he is not exhausting himself like we do, we exhaust ourselves externally, trying to somehow, sip some enjoyment out of this world, very exhausting. So by nature's device, when we go into deep sleep, we are completely detached of the senses, and we can recharge in the effulgence of the Supreme Lord. So, and then of course, a little bit more manifested externally, there are dreams. And many times people disregard dreams as not being real, This was just a dream, Or even when you have a big plan, somebody tells you, "You're dreaming, forget about it, You will never do it, But actually the reality is that the subtle reality, or the dreaming state, is as real, you could say, is as real an illusion or an experience as is the external physical experience. They're both experiences. Dreams are more mental experiences, subtle experiences, whereas externally we have more sensory, physical experiences. But they're both equally relevant. And in dreams, we also hear very often that you can have realizations while you're dreaming. So dreaming does not have to be just, you could say, wasted time. Of course, sometimes the mind puts up the most strange, weird dreams, something with your school and something what happened yesterday, and then everybody looks different, but it's that person, and very confusing. Because it's a subtle state, and in a subtle state, you're not necessarily bound to this form that you have now. Maybe you had a different form in a different life. Maybe you're dreaming about it. You just don't recognize in yourself fully. Like that, and also when whatever we experience in the external reality, it's known that we process or imbibe it. It sinks more deep while you're dreaming. So if you're practicing harmonium, or you're reading a lot, or any discipline that you're practicing, the tendency will be that you will dream about it. And in your dreaming, you will solidify that talent. I had this experience when I was learning snowboarding. So the first day I went snowboarding nearby here in the winter, I was falling the whole time. The whole day I was just falling down, on my nose, on my knees, making involuntary flips, and and then I realized more and more what my mistake was. But then the day was over, and then the whole night I was dreaming about snowboarding, and in my dream I was correcting my mistakes. And then the next morning I was able to snowboard. So I learned overnight, you could say. So the dreaming state does not have to be wasted in that sense. It can be used consciously, and in yogic terms it's called yoga nidra. Many different, we don't practice it so much, but in many yogic traditions, yoga nidra is regular sadhana practice, where you sit down and consciously go into a semi-state of dreaming, and you consciously, experience something, imbibe something while in a dreaming state. Or a guided dream might also be there. So all of this are different forms of avidya, as a platform of experience. But in a similar way, like we can use this material body to serve Krishna, we can also use the dreams, the dreaming state, to serve Krishna. And the second word is, of course, the word grantim. So the word granti means the knot. There is the knot of avidya. And avidya is described as how do you say, putting, or is the main source of suffering, you could say. There's a list of 5 items of suffering, and I forgot all of them, but raga, dvesha, attachment and rejection, and abhiniveshaha, clinging to life, and I forgot the last one, but avidya is the first one and is the source of all other forms of suffering. It's because we attach to this body, it's because we are forgetful that we are suffering. And an example that Srila Prabhupada often gives is the example of the son of a very wealthy person who for some reason forgets that actually his family is wealthy, and ends up begging, on the side of the road. And I've heard a few stories like that, real life stories like that, because in the 60s and 70s, so many seekers were going to India. But many of the seekers who went to India did not find, a guru or met Srila Prabhupada or the devotees or came to Vrindavan. Many of them just ended in Goa smoking a lot of pot, or trying all kinds of, other interesting, substances. And many Babas soon realized it's a good business, to sell something to all these hippies coming to India. So many of them never returned. Many of them went to India, never to return. And there's at least, I read once a small article about it, but quite a few well-known examples of parents, like the parents going to India many years later, on a vacation, and then in the Mumbai train station, they find their son, on the side of the, begging, completely, unrecognizable at first sight, And then they, reawaken him, let him remember, and so he can, reconnect with his family. So this is a common example also in the Bible. It's also a similar example is given. So we are, avidya means that we have forgotten, we are lost. And to forget is such a, we always underestimate how troublesome actually it is. You know? We take it for granted, especially in Kali Yuga. We just forget all the time. You know? What we did yesterday, what we did a few weeks ago, what we just read, or so many things that we have experienced, we have just forgotten. You know? They're gone. And as long as we have a, you could say, reasonable window of memory, you know, we feel it's okay. But in reality, it's not natural that we are so forgetful. You know? In previous yugas, we hear that most people used to be shruti dhara. So shruti dhara means that whatever you hear, you keep. You know? Whatever you hear, you never forget again. You know? So that would be the dream as a manager in Kali Yuga, you know, because you know, Brian and me, we have to manage, and we constantly have to remember, but we always forget as well, which creates trouble for us and for those involved, you know. So imagine you could remember everything, you know, all the services. You don't need a plan to write everything down, you know. Upananda was like that. We had a temple commander here, Upananda. He was famous. He was, no, everything is here. Yeah. Don't worry. He never wrote a plan, you know. But yeah, most people, you know, we need a plan, you know. Otherwise, we won't remember. We'll forget. So the more we realize how conditioned we are, how much we are forgetting, we can only, you know, you could say, estimate or assume how much more there is to be remembered. You know, there is so much more to be remembered. You know? So much more to be discovered or rediscovered that currently we might have not access to. You know, especially this was the previous verse. Manu was telling mukta vigrahe, I think is the word. No, this is a different word. Where's the word? But in the verse and the purport, the talk is about understanding our true nature. You know, or how does it say here? Face the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your original position, and thus, by self-realization, you will find this material differentiation to be merely flickering. You know? So we have an original position, the Swarupa, you know, the true self. Who we really are is certainly not what we think that we currently are. And one hint that is also given to, like, we can't even, you know, fathom how amazing actually we are, you know, as a spiritual soul, not our false egos. But we are really amazing actually. Each individual Atma is described to be emanating or having the power of thousands and millions of suns. You know? So there's a description in the third canto of the lotus emerging from the navel of Vishnu. And this lotus is not a lotus like we might find a lotus growing out of a seed. You know? It's a very special lotus. This lotus is made up of all the living entities. That's the description. So all the living entities make up this lotus. So that's why this lotus is shining and brilliant. You know? It's described. And each individual soul is brilliant like thousands of suns. You know? So right now, you know, we're not shining so much, you know? But sometimes we see a little bit. When somebody's really happy, you know, or ecstatic, you know, then, you know, you can see when somebody is glowing or when somebody is turned off, you know. Like, you know. It makes a huge difference, you know. When somebody's smiling, immediately they look pretty, you know? They look beautiful, attractive, you know. Somebody who's morose or depressed, you know, this little bit of light that is there, you know, is like even more dimmed down. So the soul, the individual soul, actually is, eternal, you know, an eternal entity, you know? Not a temporary body, cannot be hurt, you know, doesn't get indigestion, doesn't get, I don't know, break its legs or loses its voice or an eternal entity. So something that is eternal is very, very powerful. And we are all eternal individual souls. And the verse says, thus regaining your natural position, regaining this natural position, and rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, who is the all-powerful reservoir of all pleasure, and who lives in all living entities as a super soul, you will very soon forget the illusory understanding of I and my. So avidya is very powerful and actually not really possible to overcome just by our individual endeavors. Our individual endeavors to overcome avidya, by reasoning or by remembering, recollecting, is a rocky path, you could say. This is more the impersonal approach. Our approach is that we render service to the Lord. We understand that He is the source of all Shaktis, He is the controller, and by the connection with Him, we naturally remember. We naturally are reinstated in our original position. So naturally we forget or we overcome the influence of avidya. We forget our material bodies, material identifications, and ultimately the whole material world. Okay, I think I'll stop here. Maybe there is some questions or comments. Yes.
My question is, I once met a person. Hare Krishna, Govindadev, Prabhu, thank you very much for your lecture. I once met a person in Pforzheim, and he was revealing that he wrote a whole book about astral travels, and he was telling me very much about it, and it seemed to me very far out that there is a place where he can travel without his body and meeting elevated personalities and gets instructed from them. That was his message. So my question is that true? Because I also met a yogi in a yoga ashram once who told me a lot about it. And to which state of being is it to be?
Yes. So astral journeys is certainly real, and it's also dangerous. I know in the Gurukul in Mayapur they were experimenting. I had a friend, one of the first generations of Gurukulis who went to Mayapur. They told me there were some tantrics in Mayapur, and they taught them, how to do that. So one technique that you can use, which is not safe to replicate, but that's what you can do, is you can sit, against the wall, and you make this simple movement, ideally at night, and you make sure you don't stop this movement, and you focus on not falling asleep. You're not falling asleep. You really focus on not falling asleep. And at one point, the body just collapses, and you're still doing this. And then you can step out of your body. And they did it. And they said that you can feel that there is a string attached to your body, like an energetic string. And a few times you have the sensation that you might be pulling it too far away. If you don't know how to deal with it, then the connection might be, cut, and then you still sit there, but you will not wake up again. So, the subtle body can travel. In dreams we travel, but you can also do that consciously. Consciously use the subtle body to go somewhere. And of course, many people, when they have near-death experiences, they also have this experience. So many reports, of people who see themselves being, operated upon. And they can tell everything that the doctors were talking about, everything. Even their body is in narcosis, like cannot remember anything or see or hear anything. So this is certainly possible because the material body has two sections. We have the gross body and we have the subtle body. And anyways, every time we die, we travel with the subtle body. We make an astral journey to our next body. That's reincarnation. And also very important to be conscious of is that the gross physical body only lasts for 100 years. Depending what kind of body you have, it might be a different time lapse, but relatively speaking, always 100 years. 100 years of a dog, 100 years of a human, or 100 years, depending also where you live and which circumstances. 100 years in Europe is different than 100 years in Sierra Leone, or wherever you are. Or in Brahmaloka, 100 years lasts a little bit longer. But the physical body always lasts 100 years. And the subtle body only is changing form, and is as long as you have a material existence is present. So the subtle body is much more us, you could say, than the physical body. The physical body is constantly fully changing. You die, and then the Akash Chitta, or the Chitta, it's Ahankara, Manas, and Buddhi, also false ego, intelligence, and mind. That's much more who we really are. And that entity is traveling from one body to the next constantly. And there are techniques to, while you are embodied, traveling somewhere and then coming back. But we don't really practice that. But what is very common, or you will hear very often also, is that in this subtle realm of dreaming, or the subtle, when you are active with your subtle body, you might get instructions from your guru, or Krishna. This we hear very often. So Prabhupada also used to say, if you dream of Krishna or your guru, you should take it seriously. You should not just think, it's just a dream. So that's what I was also trying to say before. Dreams are real, and there is something to be learned from them, and it reflects our consciousness, it reflects our state of being, and yes, you can receive instructions. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj took sannyas, based on a dream. Srila Prabhupada also. Prabhupada was telling Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj regularly appeared on his dreams and told him to take sannyas, and he was, I don't want to take sannyas. But Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj kept appearing in his dream, and then he took sannyas. Yes.
But it's not that we as Vaishnavas could gain something spiritually from this astral travels. It's just some material plaything.
Yeah, it's part of avidya. It's part of the astral body is part of avidya. You could try to travel. I don't know where you want to travel to meet Brihaspati, or Vyasadev, in Bararik Ashram. Our connection is through the Guru Parampara, and that's it is dangerous actually. If it's a real astral journey, it is dangerous because you might not come back. So it's tricky business.
Just one last question, sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
If forgetfulness comes from Krishna, and we are in Kali Yuga quite forgetful, is this regarding to our karma? Is this something that needs to be happening, that we learn a certain thing, and if we realize this in our devotional life and we want to change it to be more aware and remembering, what is the learn effect and how to develop this quality?
Yeah, as Kali Yuga progresses, memory becomes less and less, that's for sure. And but in general, while we are embodied, for most people, in order to be attached to a certain body, you need to forget your previous body. Otherwise, there's a confusion. And a very good example is in the story of Chitraketu, whose son was brought back to life by Narada Muni. And his father was like, wow, thank God, thank you, Narada Muni, my son is back. And then he embraced his son, and my son, very strong attachment, it's really amazing to have a son, to be honest. But that son then, was very sober and said, oh, who are you? In which family, in which life are you my father? Because he was already on his way to his next journey, and he was at that point conscious, in this transitory position. He was conscious that Chitraketu was his father in his last life, but he had so many fathers in previous lives. So that was very sobering for Chitraketu. So it is necessary for us to forget in order to be attached. So that's how avidya works. Avidya makes us forget, what position we're really in, and therefore just by studying and hearing and understanding, already we can overcome so much ignorance, so much misconceptions about how we perceive our situation. Reicht das? But your question was more about the learn effect.
Yeah, me personally, I experienced that at some point I prayed to Krishna and prayed to Pradyumna, etc., and this had some kind of effect, and I remember better and better verses in this. But I was just curious if there is some, some change of mind that is important, that Krishna says, okay, it's good if you have a good remembrance.
You like how to gain more memory? Like memorizing Sanskrit verses themselves expands memory. Like if you, in general, if you memorize, the more you memorize, the more you have memory. It's like a muscle actually. So if you memorize many verses, and especially with Sanskrit, it's known, there's a few things, like writing Chinese characters, because there's thousands of characters, writing and memorizing them is considered to use both brain halves. And speaking and hearing Sanskrit, it's supposed to have the same effect on the brain. So memorizing Sanskrit certainly has the effect that you will be able to memorize more. And you can see that in, children who in traditional schools, in the Gurukul we also to some extent had that. We used to, memorize whole chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And in traditional Gurukuls in India, in some areas still, many children memorize the Vedas, one Veda or all four Vedas, and depending they're called in Dvivedi, Trivedi or Chaturvedi, if they memorize 1, 2 or 3 or all four Vedas, So yes, it's a muscle, so we can train it, but of course ultimately depends on Krishna. And because you can memorize a lot and you can know a lot, having a lot of knowledge can also be a burden. Gadada Prabhu from Berlin once gave a very long lecture about the burden of knowing. If you don't use it, if you don't use this knowledge that you have, it becomes a burden. If you don't apply it, it becomes a burden. If you don't understand it, it becomes a burden, and so on. So sometimes knowing too much, like physically, is not necessarily helpful also. Like the gopis were very simple. They knew one very important thing, they love Krishna. And by that, everything else was, everything was accomplished. So it might be helpful, to be more knowing, more conscious. But ultimately, if we accumulate knowledge or information just like we accumulate wealth or any other material things, it can also become a distraction, a burden actually, not necessarily helpful. But also the question that you're putting is the question, I think is a general question some people have about karma. How is it, that karma has a learning effect if we don't remember, what we did, So this is I think that this question is also there, which is a big question I will not answer now. Yes. Björn.
Thank you very much for the lecture. If we get realizations in the dreams and they are also real and important and reflect our state of consciousness, then I myself I cannot remember my dreams most often. It's very rare that I can remember. So would it be needful to remember then? And if yes, then how to in general be more conscious of one's own consciousness in wake state and also dream state?
There, when gaining realizations from dreams is listed in a long list of different techniques we can use. So it's not the only one. So if you can't remember your dreams, you can just observe nature, it says, in the Yoga Sutras. You observe nature and you will see everywhere there is intelligence, everywhere there is design, there is life, or you can just observe your breath, as it goes in and out of your body. So learning from dreaming is one possible technique. It's not that something we need to. You know, if you can't, you can't. Yeah. And what's the second part? More conscious of your unconsciousness. Yeah, like in the Yoga Sutras, this like learning from dreams is mentioned in the Yoga Sutras also, and there's a long list, you know, and we of course have a list of 9 items we mainly use, you know, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Palana, Sevanam. So Smaranam is also there, you know, and Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, these are considered to be the 3 most important. Applying those 9 processes of Bhakti Yoga consciously, you know, it's for us our main focus, our main technique. But in the Bhagavatam also this technique of observing nature is mentioned. You know how, I forgot how many gurus, in the 11th canto there is this list of the different gurus in nature, you know, and the gurus, the yogis observing the spider, you know, and the spider is, you know, manifesting all this, you know, spider web, you know, out of its small body, you know, and very often the spider also can, you know, manifest like a string to come down, you know, and then it can like swallow like the string back into its body, you know. So when the yogi was observing that, he said, okay, that's how Vishnu manifests the worlds, you know. So out of Vishnu, this whole cosmos is manifested and it goes back into Vishnu as well, you know. So by observing nature, we can gain lessons, you know? And there's like all this, I forgot the entire list, but it's a very interesting list from all different circumstances, manifestations of nature, people, how they act. There's always something we can learn and become more conscious. And of course, yeah, being attentive. It's okay? Brian has one more question.
Is there a difference between avidya and ajnana?
They're very similar, but avidya is the more universally used word for sure. Avidya is used to depict, like to talk about the entire material existence, describe our whole material situation. So if you just understand this one word properly, everything is contained in that word, you could say. So maybe because the word jnana means just to know, like literally like knowledge, and avidya is more like wisdom as well. But yeah, I think like the word avidya is certainly much more often used. Yes. Okay. Steve.
Hare Krishna. How do you understand if someone don't dream at night? Because you said dreaming is kind of exiting the different kind of conscious, right?
Yeah.
So for a soul, this must be exit for subconscious. Like it's only happen in dream. But if someone don't dream,
no, we all dream. Sometimes we just don't remember.
How about if someone, that's me, I don't remember when is my last dream. More than months.
Okay.
So, for your understanding, do you have any idea?
Yeah, because like when all of you have this experience, like you wake up, like if you dreamed, you know, you wake up, and straight after you wake up, you might have a full, like you are part of the dream still, you know. You are awake, and it takes you a few seconds to realize, I don't know, I remember like a few times I had this dream, and I'm walking up this mountain, and there's so many dogs, and it's a big problem, you know. And it's very like hot, you know, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh my God. And then, oh, okay, there's no dogs, there's no problem, okay, everything's good. But it takes a few seconds for you to, you know, realize you're not in the dream. But other times, the dream is so faint that you wake up and you feel what you dreamt, but you don't remember anymore what you dreamt, you know.
How about if I didn't feel?
And then, Yeah, but I'm trying to say is that we forget it very fast, you know. Very often, some people do like write their dreams down, and they tell that if you don't write your dreams straight after you wake up, you will not probably not remember it anymore. You know? So the point is that we all are dreaming. You know, it's one of the stages of consciousness. We all are dreaming. We all are active internally. You know, just some people are, you know, have maybe more access to it, and some people less access or forget it sooner. You know. Yeah, and also what also of course can happen that you might wake up out of a deep sleep. You know, that can also happen. You're in full deep sleep, and then wake up. You know, understand?
Because I feel weird. Because I was dreaming before, like many years ago or a few years ago. I know the feeling of dreaming.
Okay.
But I just didn't dream for long.
Yeah, no, because dreaming is one of the stages of consciousness. So some people might dream just before they wake up. Other people might dream in the first part of their sleeping and then go into deep sleep, you know, and then not dream afterwards anymore. You know, you can wake up directly from deep sleep as well. Nice. Okay, last question.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your lecture. You talked about Yoga Nidra, and I once did for some months some guided Yoga Nidra sessions for over some hours, and it was a course. It explained that Yoga Nidra actually has a good effect, which can replace sleep sometimes also. But is it something to for very advanced devotees to start practicing? Or
No. It is a technique, because the main process of like Yoga Nidra, the first steps in Yoga Nidra is Matras Prashastu Kantaya Shitoshna Sukha Dukada Agama Paino Nityastam Sitikshas Vabarta. So Krishna says we need to learn to tolerate heat and cold, you know, success, failure. So Yoga Nidra, the first steps in Yoga Nidra are focusing just on that. You know, you travel, and you have this, you know, you go up to a mountain, it's very cold, and you go near the fire, it's very hot, and you travel, you know, very high, and you dive very deep. And so the Yoga Nidra in the beginning is trying to confront you with duality and trying to make you peaceful or detached, even your experience in this duality. So Yoga Nidra is one technique, and that you can use, but it's the same, it's a meditation to be detached of duality. That's the first step. You cannot really advance in Yoga Nidra if you don't do that in the very beginning. And like I mentioned before, if you are connected, if you observe devotees who are always connected with Krishna, that's Yoga Nidra. Understood? Because Yoga Nidra means you are in a slumber, but you are in yoga at the same time. So, like I gave the example of Srila Prabhupada, he was never really sleeping, you know, in that sense. You know, he was always in Yoga Nidra, always connected with the Lord. You know? So if we connect with the Lord, then we are in Yoga Nidra. Huh? No. Samadhi is different. But you could compare it, yeah. I mean, you could, yes.
Könnte es sein, dass wir in einem gewissen Punkt in uns diesem Zustand von Yoga Nidra annähern, wenn wir uns abends hinlegen und dann vielleicht das nicht einordnen können und denken, ich kann nicht einschlafen. Kann das passieren? Oder ist das jetzt eine Spekulation?
Da würde ich jetzt auch spekulieren. Also, fortgeschrittene Gottgeweihten brauchen einfach wenig. Huh? Aha, okay, yeah, stimmt, it was English. So he was asking that, can it be that when you can't fall asleep, that's a sign that maybe it's, you know, Yoga Nidra is starting for you?
Not always, but
sometimes. Maybe, like, but the point is, the main point is that we need deep sleep to be rejuvenated. Like sometimes when we were young brahmacharis, we used to do 4 day of, you know, almost no sleep and only kirtan, you know, because there were so many devotees here from Finland and Italy, and the brahmachari ashram was always full of people sleeping day and night, and if you wanted to sleep, you have to find a spot, you know, when somebody stood up, then you lie down there, you know. That's how full it was. So, and in between was just kirtan and, you know, taking prasadam non-stop, you know. So, after 3 days, the rule was if you could still talk normally and your legs were not hurting, you didn't took part in the festival, you know. But that also shows that, you know, usually after the festival we were sick for a week, you know. So that shows that we were not really in Yoga Nidra, you know. We were not really like fully charged just by, you know. It was very ecstatic for sure, but when it's natural, you're not exhausted, you know. So it's visible in many advanced devotees that they have the ability to, you know, Srila Prabhupada used to wake up every day at around 1 o'clock, you know, and translate. Yeah. Slept like, you know, was lying there resting for, you know, maybe 2-3 hours. So if you're able, or one example also, Prabhupada always immediately adjusted to the time zone, you know. So whenever he arrived in a new time zone, most people have jet lag. Prabhupada would just, you know, he had a daily schedule, and wherever he landed, he adjusted the schedule to the time there, straight away, you know, no jet lag. You know? So some of his servants, you know, Harisori always describes how, you know, he was always struggling to, like, you know, adjust himself as well as the servant, you know. Yes, I think it's a natural development. We take shelter of Krishna, and the more we are, you know, advancing Krishna consciousness, we might, you know, overcome sleep. Like Arjuna is also known as Gudakesha, the one who conquered sleep. You know. But the general instruction is to not sleep too much, not too little. You know, 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, depending on your dosa. And yes. Okay, we'll stop here now. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.